Let's dive a little bit deeper into reading white papers. We're going to talk about the roadmap. So most, if not all, white papers will have a roadmap of how the project will grow and a schedule of update goals. Now, it's important to understand that development of this technology, especially crypto, it's fairly new. It's only been around 10 or so years. Development is difficult and will often take longer than promised. There are always setbacks. There's always complications in the development phase. It's important to see if the project is being realistic about their goals and what they're trying to accomplish and the timelines that they've set out. Now, projects that offer grand designs on an extremely fast schedule could raise suspicions regarding their legitimacy and their expectations. So it's something we always wanted to look to see if they have a roadmap and see what they're doing to achieve that roadmap and how realistic those goals are. So here's a roadmap, just an example of a roadmap where we see this is just what it could look like. Some things doesn't always have to be a squiggly line, but it's just basically a timeline, right? We see in November 2018 beta launch of the platform. Then by February 2019, the alpha or the main launch of the platform. They'll launch ETHBay. In this particular situation, it's ETHBay on Android and iOS. They'll have an app launch on March 2019. So we have a beta launch in November of 2018. So November, December, if we want to just count ahead, December, January, February. So 3 months later, they're planning to have a main launch. So that could be realistic depending on the platform and depending how in-depth it is. Do they need more time to beta test it? That remains to be seen. So a 3-month beta, that could be realistic. Then a month from the main launch, they want to launch an Android, a mobile app, right? Android and iOS app. This could be questionable. Sometimes it's common to see one arise before the other. Sometimes it's common to see the iOS app arise before the Android app. Maybe the Android app comes out maybe 2 weeks later or so, or maybe a month later or longer. This is something that is not common. That is not uncommon, I should say, in crypto. And we see some sort of launch of services in April 2019, and implementing of a voting system to vote on proposals in 2019 in April. Then they'll start accepting ETHBay tokens on the platform in July, and then launch ETHBay classifieds in October 2019. So this could be some sort of a more realistic roadmap. What's interesting here also is that at the time of the screenshot, we also see them filling out the roadmap. We are currently here, right? We see certainly this much is filled. So there's an indication like, all right, we're up to this point. Maybe they have just filled this out, and they've completed this step and they're moving forward, or they've just reached up to this point where this is the next step for them. So not only is it important to look out for a roadmap, we also want to see if it's updated or if there are any updates on the white paper or on their website in general. Now, within the white paper itself, we should see another topic, which would be the token distribution. We also want to consider the proposed tokenomics of the crypto project. Now, tokenomics are basically the economy or the supply of the token or of the project, and there's a lot of different factors we want to consider, such as what will be the maximum supply of coins created. We know with Bitcoin, there will only be 21 million Bitcoin ever created. Now, with Ethereum, we know that there is no set maximum supply because they believe that for their purposes, since they're not trying to retain, their purpose is not necessarily to remain as a store of value, whereas Bitcoin is intentionally set at 21 million to retain value, whereas Ethereum is meant to process transactions and act as a computing network for smart contracts to be built upon, right? So it's a little bit of a different purpose, different perspective on blockchain usage and overall crypto usage. We also want to be aware of how many will be available at launch. So when we look at something, let's say, such as Shiba Inu, which has trillions, right, or trillions, if not quadrillions of tokens, it's going to be a lot harder for each one of those tokens to increase in value compared to something as such, say, Bitcoin, which only has 21 million. We also want to keep in mind how many will be available at launch. So let's say there's only 4 billion tokens available at launch, but over time, there will be 100 billion. Right? Over time, that means each one of those coins is going to be diluted in terms of valuation, because if there's only so much invested in the project and there's more and more coins created, we're going to see a dilution of the amount invested, amount of capital locked into the protocol. We also want to consider how will the team handle the initial coin offering or the distribution. So once the coin is launched, how are these coins going to be handed out? Or will they be handed out all at once, or will they be handed out periodically? Is there a priority system? Will the development team access these coins first, or will anybody who has opted into donate to the project, will they receive their tokens? Are there lock-in periods? Are there periods for early round investors to get their tokens, right? These are all different signs, right? And we want to look out for potential rug pulls, projects where these things are not necessarily set in, where the owners have the majority of the coins and how they're distributed to them and the development team, and then they dump the coins on the retail investors who are interested in the project but got in on late. And going along with that, we also want to see, will the tokens be locked for team members during launch, right? So this is one really good sign of a good project, is when, if after a launch, the tokens that are distributed to development team or the team members are locked. Maybe they have some sort of vesting period where they have to hold on to the coins for at least a year or so before they can actually sell off. And it's similar to, let's say, someone who works for a public company, a publicly traded company, where they receive shares maybe as some sort of incentive, where they have to hold on to those shares for maybe like a year or so, and they only have certain windows of opportunity where they can sell off those shares, and they're limiting the amount that they can sell off, right? These are things that are not uncommon in traditional equity markets, right? So this is something that we also see in crypto as well. If there aren't any vesting periods and the team is not locked and the tokens for the team are not locked, that could be a red flag, right? That means as soon as the project launches, they could just sell off everything that they have and then immediately drive the value of the project down. We also want to consider how future coins will be released into circulation, and if there is a release schedule. If so, is it reasonable, or are they planning on just creating billions and billions of coins, every week? How quickly are coins going to be released into the public supply, into the circulating supply? These are all things that will affect future coin valuations, especially if there is no burn mechanism, right? Which is something that we want to consider as well. Is there any deflationary protocol in place? Will unsold tokens be burned? So let's say coins are just being created. Let's say there's 50 billion coins of a certain project. How will future coins be released? Can new coins be brought into circulation at any time, or is there a strict creation schedule, a strict release schedule? And then within that, we also want to consider, is there anything planned that's going to take coins out of circulation? Is there anything that's going to deflate the token economy, right? Because if there's so much more coins being created and there's constantly coins being added, and there's no way of coins being taken out of circulation or burned in some sort of deflationary protocol, where a deflationary protocol or burn mechanism would be, let's say, where if a transaction costs 0.02 ETH, right? Or I'm just using ETH as an example, but let's say a transaction costs 2 of a certain coin, maybe 2 Cardano. Is there anything that's going to take some of that transaction cost away or burn it and take it out of circulation? That way the remaining amount that's in circulation goes up in value. That's the basic idea of a deflationary protocol. This could be taking the transaction fees, or maybe just taking a part a set amount or a partial amount of the transaction fee and destroying it as an incentive for holding the token. These are all things that are commonly done. And these are protocols and aspects of the white paper and overall token distribution, token economics, that we want to consider. So here's an example of a coin. This is Barnbridge. I personally do not own any Barnbridge. Barnbridge is the first tokenized risk protocol. So this is actually a protocol that assesses risk and then tokenizes it, and then allows you to buy and sell based off of that inherent risk that it has calculated. So it's definitely a new market. Pretty interesting stuff. So here's their white paper and their rundown, their tokenized risk protocol. We plan to create the first cross-platform derivatives protocol for any and all fluctuations. To start, we'll focus on yield sensitivity and market price. Downstream, we plan to introduce a far wider variety of hedges against fluctuations in the decentralized ecosystem. Barnbridge plans to be platform and asset agnostic, meaning that they want to have a cross-blockchain network that's not necessarily only for Ethereum or only for Solana or only for Matic. They want to be flexible and be usable for any asset. So it's definitely a great goal, definitely ambitious. We have to see how this plays out. Now here's their token distribution. This is their breakdown. The distribution breakdown is designed to facilitate the most decentralized protocol and make sure power doesn't reside in the hands of a few, where maybe just a few of the owners, maybe 20 of the owners own 80% of the coin. That's a scary situation right there, right? So much of the coin is just being held by a handful of people. So here is the token distribution of Barnbridge. We see 68% of it is held by the community, which we see in blue here, and most of it is held in yield farming, Uniswap, liquidity pool rewards, staking rewards seen here, VAR pool incentives, and a 17.7% is held in the community reserve. So this is a fairly decentralized protocol where not all the power is held in the hands of the core team or the early investors. So the core team has access to 12.5%, which you see in black. The DAO Treasury is holding 10%. Remember, DAOs are these decentralized autonomous organizations. They're essentially a democratic rule where if you own some of these tokens, you can vote on how the protocol updates and changes itself, right? So let's say there's a vote to spend money in some direction or in some way. You can vote on that, and 10% of the overall token distribution is held by this DAO. We see 7.5% is held by private investors, and then 2% is held by investors. So this is a good example of a decentralized protocol in the terms of how diverse the token holding and token distribution is. Now here's Barnbridge, and this is reading further into their white paper. This is their vesting schedule. So the vesting schedule is designed so that there is not a giant cliff waiting over users' heads at a specific point. The tokens allocated to the founders, the seed investors, and the advisors are locked into a smart contract that releases the tokens on a weekly basis over a 2-year period. The vesting period starts with the launch of the yield farming mechanism, and here is the resulting breakdown. So this is exactly what we're looking for in terms of protections for investors, especially mid to late investors, right? The early investors and the founders always have the upper hand, right? They're actually the ones creating the program. They're the first ones to invest in it. We want to make sure that there's some sort of protection that discourages them from just selling or just running off with a X amount of value and never completing the project, or just overall fleeing with capital. Next up, we'll take a look at the general project team. So it's important to look up the team members of a coin project and verify who they are, if they're real or not, if there's an actual face and a person, do they have a history, or are they just anonymous figures on the internet, right? So these are things we want to consider before we start investing our hard-earned money. This can include checking their social medias, the company website if there's one, and any potential partnerships. So in terms of the company and the websites and social media, we want to ask ourselves, does the information in the pictures listed look real? Are the pictures original, or are they stolen or found elsewhere? Do they claim to have secured a listing on a major exchange too early in their development? This is a big one that I have personally seen. I have personally seen newer coins claim, oh, we're going to get listed on a tier 1 exchange or a high-end exchange, a major exchange in the next month, as an incentive to buy in now, because there's the assumption that if that coin is listed on a higher exchange or on a high tier exchange, that the value is going to go up because now it's accessible to much more people. And this is something that could be seen as a red flag, especially if it's claimed so early, even before the project has really proven themselves, right? Why would a major exchange list them? Most major exchanges have some sort of criteria or a vetting process to make sure that they're not offering crap projects, right? Especially something like Coinbase. So it's important to take note of that and really consider, is this project really going to get listed on a major exchange? What major exchange could they possibly be talking about? We also want to consider, do members of the team have a history in other fields or companies? Where are they coming from? Are they coming from technological fields or completely different sectors? That's fine, but it's always great to look to see if they actually have a history compared to if they don't have a history. Now, one very important thing we want to consider is returns. So, is the project team promising unrealistic returns on investment? Some altcoins that have sprung up have promised thousands and percents of APYs, annual percentage yields, which is insane. There's no way that these projects can actually pay out 500% a year. There's no way, because if they really could, everyone would be doing it. So that's a major sign. If they have these extreme annual yield returns and overall yield percentages, it's definitely a red flag, right? A more realistic one would be like something like 5 to 10. Anything more than 10 to 20, even 20 is high. Anything more than like 20 would give me a red flag. I remember I actually had a friend that showed me some altcoin that was valued around, I can't remember the exact value, but I do remember seeing a screenshot or taking a screenshot of the extreme amount of APY promised. It was something like 4,200 APY promised, which is just, it's completely unrealistic to expect a company to pay that. Now, taking a look at examples of companies and persons, project team members Here's actually the founder of Cardano, one of the founding members of Ethereum. This is Charles Hoskinson. This is taken from the Cardano website. So the Cardano website is very clean, and it's very visually pleasing, and it's very easy to find and access information, especially from the project team. We see this is Charles Hoskinson. We know where he's based. We know what schools he went to, what fields he went into as well, his professional experience, what current projects he's working on, what projects he's coming from, and what projects he's already worked on as well. So here we have a clear idea. We also see a picture. There's several videos. He has an official Twitter as well. He has a YouTube channel. So we know that this is a real person and not somebody that's just fake. We can even look him up on LinkedIn. So these are all different things that we want to do before we jump into researching and investing a project.